Hello and welcome again to Oscar Mike Radio. My name is Travis. I am your host. Oscar Mike Radio is part of the Hubazoo Network. You can find out more on hubazoo.com. I want to thank my sponsors, Joyce Asack of Asack Real Estate, Army National Guard veteran Mark Holmes of Reapers Detailing and Power Washing, and my supporters, all veteran-owned businesses, Caisson Shaving Company, Black Cat Designs, and Savage American Woodwork. And a couple weeks ago, I'm on the stream with Michael Geary of Hellfish Haven, and we talked to Mr. Bob Notch of the Veterans Collaborative. And Mr. Notch, Bob is a former Army, aviator, which is a fantastic story. And we got to talk, and I'm like, I gotta find out more about what he does. I'm a big Army aviation nut, even though I was in the Marine Corps, yes. And we're in person. Like, I get to see my guests, which is, sometimes rare. And so, without any further ado, Colonel Notch, welcome to Oscar Mike Radio.
Thanks, Travis. It's a pleasure to be back talking to you again. I enjoyed the episode with Hellfish Haven.
Absolutely. And it really brought into this thing about veterans collaborating together and what's out there, and we'll get into that in a second. But before we do that, I was just curious if you could, give us an overview, if you would, of your Army experience, please.
Sure. So I was fortunate enough to attend West Point. I'm a 1989 graduate. Shortly thereafter, I went directly into Army aviation. The timing was 1990.
Okay.
So a real quick story is I was 2 weeks from graduating flight school as a Blackhawk pilot, and I got called into the commander's office. And they said, there's a little thing going on in the Gulf right now, and we need to pull a couple of students that are Blackhawk pilots to go to some units that are getting ready to deploy. So my stick buddy and I both got called in. He ended up going to Fort Campbell with the 101st. I ended up going to Fort Bliss with the 3rd ACR. And we jammed in the last 2 weeks of flight school into one day. So it was an interesting start to a military career. I quickly learned that all the training and preparation could be called upon at any time.
Oh,
so
wow.
I was able to carry that with me throughout the rest of my career. So I did a total of 27 years, 12 years active Army and 15 years in the Army Reserve as an active Guard and Reserve member. So I literally signed out of the active Army on a Thursday, swore back in Friday morning as a reservist. So I had zero break in service and continued to fill out 27 years with culminating assignment at the Pentagon my last 5 years working Army staff organization integration for aviation. 2 years on the joint staff. What ended up when I left the office was all of the Western Hemisphere operations. So that's North America, South America, and the Arctic. And then I got pulled in by the Chief of the Army Reserve to conduct general officer management. So I managed, the last year and a half of my time was managing the 200 plus Army general officers in the Army Reserve.
Oh, wow. You do all that for 27 years in the Army system. What was it like transitioning out? And every transition is different, but we're here because you now head up the Veterans Collaborative here in Boston at the CEO level. And I'm always interested in officers' transition stories, Colonel, because, a lot of us enlisted guys think that, officers they get out and there's this red carpet and, swords, and they go right into their thing and there's no problem whatsoever. And some of them have told me there's challenges there too, and there's adjustments around that. What was that like?
Yeah, I wish there was a red carpet and swords. Yeah, no, my experience, I think, is similar to many who separate from the military. I moved to this area. My wife is from this area, and that's why we settled here. So I had zero network. Right, we had her family, and that was about it. So there was no quick way to make contacts and try and get into positions at companies. So I had to start building my network. And I did that with veteran serving organizations, Military Officers Association, and then meeting individuals that had served. And I found that there's an undercurrent of veterans across Massachusetts that are willing to help each other out. You just got to get to that connection first.
So you transition out and you get here to Boston. What was it like building that network?
So it was a little bit of a challenge, but luckily I had membership in some veteran serving organizations. So I started there. Military Officers Association was one of those.
Oh, really?
And it was a good way to meet individuals who had served. You have that common bond and you can relate. And then you could start into the conversation about, yeah, I recently transitioned. I'm looking for something. This is the type of work I'm looking for. And now you've got 15 or 20 others that are helping keep an eye out what may be there for you. And then those connections lead to additional connections and you have more and more conversation. So my first job after getting out was through a network connection, a classmate of mine, a West Point classmate, and he was also a classmate of mine for a senior service college fellowship. And he was working for Rand Whitney in Worcester and said, hey, we're looking for someone to help us provide a bigger transition to some extra work that's coming up. And so I came on board for that position.
Oh, nice. So the West Point bond is a real thing, like it because I've been told that, you know, it's its own fraternity and you all make friends for life. What?
I think you do. I would say it's similar to anyone who was in the military,
Yeah.
right? You have that immediate understanding. I know what you went through. I understand basic training. You know,
Sure.
I understand what cadet basic training looks like, and I understand what 4 years of very rigorous education plus athletics and other requirements, military requirements on top of it. I know what those demands are, so I understand the type of person it takes to be able to successfully navigate all of that. So those are the things that I think carry the bond.
So you're at Rand Whitney. What was that job experience like? You know, you're fully civilian now and you're adjusting that. What was that like at that time?
It was interesting, using a lot of the skill sets that I had. So
Yeah.
it was helping pull data together and putting together a plan to expand the number of packages that they were able to support with what they do. It was actually a term job. It was supposed to be a 6-month term job.
Okay.
What I realized shortly thereafter was when the truth changed in the business world, especially when it involves products, and the plan of expanding business quickly becomes, well, we're not expanding business. Your job becomes expendable at that point. So that 6-month term job turned into about a 3-month term job, and I was looking for work again.
Yeah, is this where you started, you know, your path to Veterans Collaborative now, or were there other things in between that?
I was actually connected by one of the members of my Military Officers Association chapter to a nonprofit.
Okay.
And he was on the board of directors, said they're looking to create a new position. They're hiring right now. So it was an opportunity to get in and interview. And I was able to leverage my military background and the skills that I created there into picking up that job. So I picked up that position and developed veteran programs and marketing for the organization that didn't have a marketing plan, and built those things in about 4.5 years that I spent there.
Oh, wow. So when did you come to the Veterans Collaborative as you are now?
It was shortly after I started that position. So
Okay.
January of 2017 is
All right.
when I started. And what I realized getting into the position is I need to understand what the environment looks like. You know, what's the area of operations here in Massachusetts for veteran serving organizations? I need to meet those organizations, find out who they are, what they do, so we're not duplicating effort. That was my goal, is to make sure we're not going to create something that somebody else is really good at already. It's identifying where there might be gaps.
Gotcha.
And that conversation led to, oh, you know, there is an organization called the Greater Boston Veterans Collaborative, and their goal is to connect all of the serving organizations. And I said, that's right up my alley. I would love to be part of that. And so I volunteered to be part of their steering committee at the time.
So you get involved with this collaboration effort and eventually become CEO. I'm curious, because a lot of times, the book I read after the Marine Corps was from Navy Blue to Corporate Gray, I believe is the name of the book. And it goes over how to take your military experience, whether you're enlisted or officer, and translate that into the corporate world or boardroom. At that time, when you're taking the helm of this organization to run it and to make it successful, just what were the differences between running things in the Army way versus, more of a corporate civilian way?
So it's interesting. I actually think that the Army, the longer you stay in the Army or the military, the more they build you into a generalist, which means you're no longer skilled in just one thing. You have expanded your experiences to, I was primarily operations, but at some point I picked up organization design and development. So that became, another skill set that I had. And then there were certain points where I did human resources throughout my career. And then, especially as a full-time reservist, where you're the only one at an organization, or there's very few of you, for 28 days out of the month, you learn how to do everybody else's job while they're not there, so they can pick up on the weekend. So all of those experiences expand your knowledge in, logistics, human resources, training, operations, communications. And that generalist capability, I know a little bit about everything to be able to tie those pieces together and understand the communication that's required to make sure that things go smoothly, because you need all those parts working together. I think it's one of the reasons why they call them generals, right, when they get to that senior level, because you become a generalist. What I found, at least my experience in the civilian sector, is when you're looking for positions, they don't recognize the skill set of a generalist. They're looking for someone who has done this one thing for 10 to 15 years at a time. So my thought is those skill sets apply more to executive positions within an organization. And again, in the civilian world, they're a little wary of taking someone who hasn't been in my particular type of corporation for 10 or 15 years. You're an outsider. You don't know how we put boxes together and do packaging, or you don't know how we do IT infrastructure. But when you get at those executive levels, it's less about those skills and more about people skills and understanding how to get people to work together, how to focus on a mission or a requirement and get the work done. So to me, it was kind of a natural fit of, I've got this broad skill set to be able to cover a lot of things. And when I moved into the president role, we're an all-volunteer organization. So I still have to do pretty much all of those types of jobs as well to keep it moving.
So one thing you mentioned, and one thing I was thinking about, is this aspect of people and being able to communicate and work with people. The military has, it's easy to say the helicopter, but there's people that work on the helicopter, supply the helicopter, and fly the helicopter. How important was the people skills you acquired in the military to be able to lead at this level?
I think very important. I mean, you learn to understand the different types of people out there.
Yeah.
One thing the military, I say this all the time to those in the civilian world, I said, you need to understand that someone who's coming out of the military has far broader experience dealing with people that grew up in different parts of the country or different ethnic backgrounds. And they've all had to come together in the military and work together and work very closely together, sometimes sleep 2 feet apart from each other for months at a time, right? So you have to be able to have, I think it builds an understanding of those differences, but really focuses more on what's common to us all and what keeps us together, what drives us to move forward, take action. And I think the military does a fantastic job of helping all of us that are part of it learn those things and build those connections. So
you're on with Michael and myself, Michael Geary of Hellfish Haven, and I do a show on Wednesday nights called W.A.R, We Are Resilient. And we talked to Colonel Notch here about what you do with the Greater Boston Veterans Collaborative. And it was Very interesting. And so for those out here who didn't get to see that show, sir, would you kind of just take us through what you all do in this area, please?
Sure. I'll start out by going back to 2015. So this
Okay.
is a couple of years before
Sure.
I joined the organization. The reason the collaborative began is there were a number of veteran serving organizations that mostly provided social connections for veterans. Volunteer work, volunteer projects, things like that, running together, whatever it happened to be. Those organizations, the leadership there started getting questions from some of the members. I need help with this. Where do I go? And they said, geez, I'm not quite so sure where you should go. And the concept was, hey, if we all get together and meet each other as organizations, number one, we'll build a relationship which builds trust eventually. But it also gives me an understanding of what your organization does and what your eligibility requirements are for someone to get services and all those things. So the group organized to be able to inform themselves so they could help the veterans within their organization. When they asked, they said, I know who does that, and let me get you connected. So we've built on that concept since 2015. I joined in 2017 as part of the steering committee. We were a grassroots effort at that time. During the pandemic, we had been taking a long look at staying power. How can we continue to do the work that we do? So we incorporated, became a 501c3, and launched ourselves as a nonprofit. I slid into the president's role. A lot of the other steering committee members stayed on and now serve as board members. We all do the work. We're all volunteers. We do the work. And what we focus on is building a community of providers. And it's whether you serve active military, just veterans, a specific subset of veterans, family members of the veterans, families of the fallen, so veterans that are no longer with us, but their families still are. All of those organizations are connected. And we help provide a way for them to connect. And we do that with in-person meetings. During COVID, we shifted more to Zoom as a way to connect, and so we do monthly Zoom calls where we invite the organizations to come in, share what you're doing so others know, and then provide opportunities to ask for help or offer help to other organizations. We have a website that has huge amount of information.
It does.
Our board chair, who was the co-founder of the organization, has done a tremendous amount of work of pulling all that together. She is out reaching for information. Who's out there? What do they do? How do we get them listed so others can find them? We invite all of those organizations to submit their events into one calendar. So we have one calendar of events for veterans across all of Massachusetts. And it provides a way for those organizations to share information, to understand what each other does. I think it helps those organizations to be able to manage their own programs a bit better. So how many times have you seen a nonprofit change what they do because a veteran walked in the door, asked for something they didn't provide, and they said, oh, well, I don't know who does that. Let's create a new program. Well, now they have to spread their budget thinner and their people thinner to be able to handle that. And they're not great at it because they're learning it. Well, what if they knew that 10 miles down the road there was an organization that does that, has been doing it for 20 years, is very good at it, and just needs that referral for the veteran to be handed off. So one of our focus areas is making sure that we're not duplicating effort, which helps organizations become very focused and really good at what they do. And it also spreads the knowledge across the service field about who's doing which work.
So one of the things, this is very key because, when we were talking with Michael, I kept thinking that, until I got into the website and really dug in, I was operating under the idea that this was for veterans. But as I got into it, and just now, you're talking about the actual organizations. I do this for veterans, and I need to collaborate with other providers. That's where the real strength of what you all do comes into play.
Because we believe if that is a strong community and a trusting community, that when someone needs help, whether it's a service member, a veteran, or a family member, reaches out to one organization to get help, they will never be told, hey, go somewhere else. They will say, I know who does that. I will help connect you to that organization. So there's never a no, right? It's been coined as the no wrong door approach. If you ask for help, you connect to one who then can connect you to all.
That's nice. I got to remember that one, because so often, even for me, when I'm approached by somebody, I'm like, I don't know, and I don't want that I don't know to become a no. So I got
Exactly.
Yeah,
you want to provide that help.
Right.
And that's what we want to do. We want to be able to give organizations the ability to do exactly that.
So I'm an organization, right? Let's just say I am. I mean, I kind of am, but not in that sense. One of the challenges I hear from a lot of people in the veterans nonprofit space or nonprofit space is they have their program, they've been in existence for like 1 to 3, 1 to 7 years, and they're still having trouble, executing their mission because there's no one taking, advantage of their services or figuring out how to collaborate effectively to get the help. So let's start with the first spoke first. We kind of covered the second one already, but what do you say to somebody when they're like, I have this organization, I do this, I know it's a need, here's my research, here's my data, but I still can't engage with veterans to get them to partake of the services I offer. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, it's a very common theme that we hear from the organizations that we work with, right? I've created this great program. Where are the veterans? Right? They're not showing up. And then I'll talk to veterans who go, I can't find anyone who provides this. So we've got these two groups that are just missing each other somehow. And what our goal is, by connecting everyone, is that veteran just needs to find one, right? It doesn't have to be the right one, but if you find one, they can help you get it connected to the right one. Okay. For the organizations, the recommendation is jump on board, join the collaborative. We don't charge a membership fee. We want to make sure this is equitable to, the 2-person, all-volunteer, shoestring budget nonprofit on an equal footing as the 250-employee, $10-20 million a year nonprofit that's out doing contract work and other things.
Now, do you? Because a lot of people will think, well, that 2-person nonprofit doesn't have as much skin in the game as a bigger nonprofit, but you say treat them all equally?
We do.
Okay.
And that's because every individual who asks for help, every veteran, every service member, family member, they're all different. So they may go to an organization that provides the services they need, but it's just not a good fit. It's like trying to find the right yoga instructor or, whatever program you like. And it's like, I just don't like this instructor, but I found another one who's great. We get along and I connect and I'm really on board with this program now. So that's what we recognize is individuals may not click with certain organizations. So it's, in some cases, it's good to have redundancy in services out there because you may not be the right fit for this person, but they are.
So, sir, one of the things that I hear doing Oscar Mike Radio and being involved in some nonprofits is, I got this nonprofit, I've put a lot of work and effort into it, and stand up a 501c3 in this state or any state's a hard thing, doing the due diligence, doing the marketing and all that stuff, and it is hard work, and you spend a lot of yourself doing this, and you're not getting paid for it. And you get to the point where you're like, yes, we are open for business, we're here. And then I get asked, like, Travis, where's the veterans? Where are these people at? I mean, do you run into that, Bob, and how do you deal with that, or what's your perspective around that, please?
We do hear that, and that is the misconnection between veterans looking for organizations that they just can't find and organizations looking to serve veterans that are just not coming in the door.
Okay.
And our goal is to merge those two things together so the veterans are connecting with the organizations that are a best fit for them. One thing that happens when you have these organizations connected with each other is they have the ability to refer clients. So Some organizations may be very well known and have veterans coming all the time, asking about anything. Those are the folks that can refer clients to a smaller organization that's just starting out. The key is getting into the organization, becoming part of the collaborative effort, and becoming a trusted partner to those organizations. There's ways, we can help encourage organizations to maybe become stronger partners with, if you have a complementary service to another organization, you should build a stronger relationship to be paired together. A lot of the data that we've looked at for veterans that reach out to help, they usually don't need just one thing. When they walk in the door, they think they need just one thing. But as you continue to ask questions and kind of travel down the road of how did you get here, you find out that there's maybe 2 or 3 other things that could benefit them to help get back on track. So we try to help identify those 2 to 3 things, which don't have to come from one organization, can come from multiple organizations that work together. And so that will help drive traffic. The other thing we can do is our shared calendar provides a purpose for this. So advertising, marketing, I think you know this well. You got to market or people don't know you exist. Right. I say all the time, if you build it, there's no guarantee they will come.
That idea is gone.
Right? It's not a field of dreams in the nonprofit world. So you have to be visible, you have to get out there, people have to know you exist. And that's not just veterans, that's neighbors of veterans or family members of veterans who can say, oh, by the way, I saw this organization, they might be someone who could help you. So it's getting the word out. You can do that through our shared calendar. The reason we build that calendar is so anyone who has an event or a program that's coming up can post it, it's visible to all of the other organizations. They can pull that down, stick that flyer on their bulletin board, or put it out on their own website, whatever it happens to be, and help spread the word. So we kind of do some bonding over the marketing piece as well through the collaborative.
So I'm a nonprofit. I just got started, or I've been established for a while, and I'm going through, like, we're halfway through the year, so come September it's gonna be time to start budgeting and getting ready for 2024. And I'm hopefully watching or listening to this or doing something else, and I'm like, I want to engage with the Greater Boston Veterans Collaborative. What's the process for a nonprofit to approach you all and get onboarded? How's that look?
It's very easy. Go to collaborate.vet, that's our website. There is a way to connect on those pages in there. Some of that is moved around, but you'll find a way to connect with the organization. That will put you on what we call our network list. We use a couple software tools to pull all of this together, and I'm going to date myself, that puts you on a digital Rolodex with all of the other organizations that are in there. So if you're ever wondering, hey, who would be a great contact at X organization, or I know this person but I can't remember their organization, you can look it up either way and find them. The other thing we do is we also encourage folks to send us a message and say, hey, I want to be connected, and then we will also send an invitation to our communications channel. So we use Slack as our primary means of communication.
Nice.
We'll send out a digital invite. Right now we have over 1,200 individuals on our Slack channel, and we have multiple channels within that. So if your specialty is employment, we have a channel for you and all the other ones that are specifically tied to employment. If you specifically do health and wellness, we have a separate channel for you to have those conversations. And then we have a general channel, so if it doesn't fit anywhere else, here's something that I want to share with the group, or here's a question I want to ask the group to get group input, or I've got a veteran who needs this kind of service, who out there can help me?
I'm thinking about this, and I'm curious. What you came through COVID, which was challenging for any nonprofit, and as I found out with Michael Geary on our We Are Resilient thing, I mean, you all are truly Oscar Mike. You're on mission. You're on the move. You're doing it. What is the next phase or stage for you all? in this day and age?
So we are continuing to look at where are the opportunities to continue to connect organizations. One of the things that's also in our mission statement is that we are promoting a data-driven understanding of the needs of veterans here in Massachusetts. So there's not a ton of data out there about the needs. We pull information that we can get from anywhere. So if it's a national study or a study within another state, there's probably some value in that. So we pull that information and make it available to organizations. So if it's homelessness, if it's suicide prevention, if it's employment, we're pulling that information as much as possible to be able to share that. Our goal would be able to build our own capacity, and maybe that's a capacity working with one of the universities here in the local area, is to be able to create some new surveys and find out where are the gaps and what are the things that maybe a new generation of veterans needs versus an older generation of veterans. One of the things that I think is unique for us is sometimes organizations can pick a certain category of, I am working with disabled veterans, or I am working with veterans, but I'm not working with active military members. We are creating the connection to all of those pieces. So we have organizations that deal solely with military members or the family members of military members, and then some that are dealing with just veterans or just family members. So, but they're all interconnected. And so we provide the ability to link those organizations together. So if your organization's serving active military, that individual's getting ready to transition, and your mission doesn't cover that, that's your opportunity to refer that veteran to an organization who is solely focused on veterans. And then it helps smooth out that transition.
Now, one of the things you mentioned a couple times, and it's important to me because I just talked to a member of a Columbia University research team, the Family Flex study, about veterans' families. You mentioned families several times. Do you see that veterans organizations or organizations in general need to account for the greater family of a veteran to understand what that veteran's going through? Because it didn't used to be that way. It was just veteran only, right?
Well, I think the way I look at it is you're taking a military member, whether that's male, female, and that individual had a steady paycheck for X number of years as long as they were in the service, and they knew what that was and all the benefits that come with that. They're transitioning now to a civilian career where those benefits may not be the same, that pay may not be the same, the frequency of that may change depending on how long the job lasts. If it's a term job that doesn't last the full term, all of those things impact the rest of the family. And so I think when we talk about supporting or treating an individual, you also have to understand that there's a support system, a family support system that's tied to them. And that's a mutually supporting system, right? Your family supports you. At the same time, you also have to help support your family and take care of your family. So I don't think you can separate the two, to be honest. What we like to understand is, hey, not every organization has the capacity to support the veteran and the family member. That's more funding, more programming, all of those things. But if you're connected to an organization that does the family piece, now you're providing support to the whole of the community, the whole family.
I think this is very relevant because it's kind of like we're in the military where, we don't fight alone. We don't do anything alone. And so out here, you're bringing people into a funneled space so we can achieve whatever objective we're going after. I guess I would ask, as we're kind of winding this down, is you have your plan in place, you're executing that, you have your future kind of planned out in the near future. How can people either support what you all are doing or help in some way?
So first, I would advise people go to collaborate.vet. Okay. There's opportunities if you want to donate to help us be able to pay for the websites and the other tech tools that we use to pull all of this together. We would love that. We need the support just like everybody else. We also have had some programs, and we're going back to extend the program we created during COVID, which was addressing food security, where we were able to grab several grants. And how we work that is we provide the administrative support. We applied for the grant, received the grant, converted that into grocery cards at several of the grocery chains around here. And then we distributed those to all of the organizations that were directly serving the military or veterans, because they knew who was struggling, right? They're the first line. They're the ones doing the work. So our goal was, you do what you do best. We'll give you the resources to be able to help that family get through whatever, bit of trouble that they're having right now. At least put a little bit of food on the table. So we're always looking to continue that program. Donations can be specifically identified to use for food security. We also will take, if someone wants to send us a note and say, hey, I work at a company, we love to do volunteer work. Are there any organizations that have events coming up where they need volunteer help? We can assist with that. It's not a formal program, but it's the ability to take people who have skills instead of maybe money that they want to offer to the serving community, and connect them with the organizations that might need it. And I'm looking at not just, I've got a ruck run or a 5K or a one-day event and I need 20 people to come in. Yes, we're looking at that. We're also looking at the smaller nonprofits that are working to put those events together, and they need help 6 months in advance. Hey, I need someone to help planning logistics. I need somebody to help planning with finance and fundraising for the specific. Those volunteers are needed too, and those are individuals who can connect with an organization that have the ability to meet, every other week for 6 months to be able to put the program together and make it work. So that's another option. It's either give what you can build with your hands, or if you've got the ability to support with funding, we'll accept either and help you get that support into the veteran community.
Well, I think that's very key. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because some people say, well, I don't have a lot of money, so, there's no point in me engaging, and vice versa. Well, I have his money and it seems more hands-on, so I'm kind of going to be standoffish. But it sounds to me like if you have both, or, one of each, there's a place where you can make that resource utilized.
Yep. We want whatever you have to be able, we don't want to turn anything away. It's just like the, no wrong door approach. The same happens for those that want to contribute, right? We want you to be part of the mission. We want you to be able to, fill that little thing that's digging at you in your heart that says, hey, I want to pay back for the folks that were serving so I could live my life. Or I want to pay back for the folks that did what my dad or my grandfather did, during Korean War or World War II, whatever it happens to be.
So just one more time, sir, just tell people where they can connect with the Greater Boston Veterans Collaborative.
Please go to collaborate.vet, V-E-T, and you'll be able to find our information there. We also have a companion website that takes some of the information that we've gathered, specifically our calendar, in a way for a veteran to ask for help or a family member to ask for help, and that's at a website called ma.vet, mass.vet. That one is specifically for veterans. We remove all of the clutter and make it very simple. Here's a calendar to look at, and if you need help, just hit this button.
Nice. Keep it simple for us. Awesome. This is one of the best parts of doing Oscar Mike Radio, sir, is finding out what I don't know and filling those gaps. And then, seeing the people take this and connect where needed. And I just want to thank you for taking time out of your busy day to sit with me and, adjust to, new environments, new places, and have this conversation. I really appreciate it.
No, it's a pleasure for me. I'm always learning myself. I think I mentioned this on the other podcast. There's not, at one point there was not a week that went by that I did not learn about a new organization here in Massachusetts that I'd never heard of before. I'd say that's every 2 weeks now, because we've got a good connection of over 200 organizations. But there's still a lot of help out there that we may not all be familiar with, and we want to build that community so we understand what each other's doing. So thank you for the opportunity of being able to spread that word.
Appreciate it. So look, folks, you have the information. I'll have this in the Oscar Mike Radio show post. If you are a veterans centered nonprofit in Massachusetts, you can get connected. And I think, the theme I'm hearing again, Colonel, is that we are stronger together. You don't have to do this alone. So I'm Travis Oscar Mike Radio with my guest, U.S. Army Colonel retired Bob Notch with the Greater Boston Veterans Collaborative. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Join us on National Wreaths Across America Day, December 16th, 2023. Each December on National Wreaths Across America Day, our mission to remember, honor, and teach is carried out by coordinating wreath-laying ceremonies at Arlington National Cemetery, as well as more than 3,700 additional locations in all 50 states, at sea and abroad. Join us by sponsoring a veteran's wreath at a cemetery near you, volunteering, or donating to a local sponsor group.
Thank you for listening and watching Oscar Mike Radio, where our active duty service members and veterans are in action and the mission is in flight. If you are a veteran or know a veteran who needs help, please dial 998 and press 1 for the Veterans Crisis Line.